How do you escape a forbidden love that feels like breathing? At 23, Daisy Kendrick was about to learn the price, because no matter how far she ran, she kept ending up in her dad's friend's arms. 10 hours ago, Daisy made a mistake. She kissed a stranger, the kind of kiss that erased logic, the kind that made her forget her own name. When the most attractive man she'd ever seen pulled her against him, she didn't hesitate. She rose onto her toes and claimed his mouth like she had every right to. Maybe it was the champagne. Maybe it was the way his hand felt, strong and possessive at her waist. Either way, she did it. And 10 hours later, standing in a sleek Italian office, staring at Antonio Brennigan across the glass table, one thought consumed her. Oh, God. Oh, no, please let this be a nightmare. But it wasn't. Antonio's piercing blue eyes widened just slightly. Recognition flickered across his face. Then something darker. His jaw tightened. Daisy Kendrick, he said slowly, like he was testing the name. Like he couldn't quite believe it. She wanted to disappear. Wanted the polished marble floor to crack open and drag her straight to hell. But there was no escaping this. Because 10 hours ago, she hadn't known who he was. Welcome to Stories That See You. If this story speaks to you, please like and subscribe, and rate it from 1 to 10 in the comments. Thank you. 10 hours earlier, the air smelled of salt and citrus, the kind that only belonged to southern Italy, clinging to skin like a memory you couldn't shake. Daisy Kendrick had been on the Amalfi Coast with her best friends for less than a day. Yet it already felt unreal. The winding roads cutting through cliffs, laughter spilling from terrace bars, waves brushing against marble stairs below. She was supposed to relax, celebrate graduation. Her father's voice echoed in her head. Call Antonio when you arrive. He'll keep an eye on you there. She took another sip of her champagne, letting the cold bubbles wash away the thought. Forget Antonio. What did she need a babysitter for anyway, when there was this? Lights, music, freedom. Her father's business partner could wait until tomorrow's office meeting. Tonight was hers. But inside the pulse of the beach club, the world spun too fast, too bright. Colored lights glowed across the crowd, shadows flickering over bronzed skin, and champagne glasses raised high. The bass throbbed through her chest, vibrating through the floor beneath her heels. Steph leaned closer, her breath warm against Daisy's ear. That man at the bar, look at him. Her voice pitched higher to cut through the music. Daisy's gaze slid toward the bar. He didn't belong to the chaos. Taller than the crowd, broad shoulders stretching the fabric of his dark shirt, bronzed skin glowing in the low light. His hair was damp, swept back carelessly. When his head turned just slightly, she saw them. Eyes the piercing blue of the Tyrrhenian Sea, trained directly on her. Something dangerous moved inside her chest. Lucy leaned in from the other side, already fanning herself. "Who is that?" Steph grinned. "Oh my God, he's gorgeous." She paused, tilting her head. And older, 35 at least. Definitely not a beach club regular. The man looked back. A slow, knowing glance that lasted a heartbeat too long. Daisy was frozen, pinned by those blue eyes across the crowded room. It was ridiculous. She didn't even know him. Yet somehow, in the rush of strobe lights and music, she felt like he already owned the next move she'd make. She laughed nervously, tucking a strand behind her ear that didn't need tucking. Steph nudged her ribs. "He's totally staring at you." Daisy's lips curved despite herself. "Don't be ridiculous." But her pulse hammered against her collarbone, betraying her. And then, the wrong kind of touch. A hand slid low over her hip, a stranger pressing too close, his breath hot with alcohol. Daisy stiffened, twisting away, but before she could escape, he was there. One strong arm came around her waist, pulling her free with effortless authority. The unwanted hands vanished instantly. She stumbled, colliding with the hard line of his chest. Heat radiated through the thin barrier of her dress. The scent of him, cedar, salt, something darker, flooded her senses. "You okay?" His voice was low, roughened by the music, tinged with Italian. She tipped her chin up. Blue eyes, even more devastating up close. "Yeah." Her voice came out breathless. "Thank you." He didn't step back. His hand stayed at her waist, warm through the fabric. His gaze traced her face, lingering just long enough to make her skin warm. "I noticed you from across the room." Her throat went dry. "You're beautiful." He tilted his head slightly, considering. "But it's not just that. There's something about you, something that makes you impossible to miss in a crowd like this." The champagne buzz gave her courage she didn't know she had. Daisy met his eyes, her pulse racing. "I could say the same about you." The words left her mouth before she could stop them. Heat flooded her cheeks. A faint smile tugged at his lips. He nodded once, barely, like he was amused by her boldness. His eyes narrowed slightly, studying her. "You're not from here? American?" "Yes." She shifted her weight, suddenly aware of how close he was standing. "Just here with friends. Having fun." His smile deepened, but something darker flickered behind it. "Be careful with Italian men." His voice dropped lower, almost a warning. "When they see beauty like yours, they don't let go easily." The words should have felt like a warning. Instead, they felt like a promise. Someone shoved past, hard. Daisy stumbled forward, her hands flying out instinctively. She collided with his chest again, solid and warm beneath her palms. His arms came around her immediately, pulling her closer, shielding her from the chaos pressing in around them. She inhaled sharply. Cedar, salt, something darker underneath. His hand spread across her lower back, holding her steady. She looked up, and the world narrowed to just his face, the sharp line of his jaw, the faint stubble, those blue eyes locked on hers. His other hand lifted, fingers brushing her chin, tilting her face up slowly. Her heart hammered. She rose onto her toes, fingertips grazing his jaw, and pressed her lips to his. He froze for half a heartbeat, then kissed her back. Hard. His hand slid into her hair, angling her head, deepening the kiss until she couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The music faded. The crowd disappeared. There was only heat and salt and the taste of him on her tongue. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. His thumb traced her jawline, slow and deliberate. Then, a hand gripped his shoulder. A man appeared beside them, leaning close to murmur something sharp and urgent in Italian. He pulled back, breath rough, thumb tracing the corner of her lip. "If I didn't have to go," he murmured, "I wouldn't." Her heart stumbled. "Then don't," she whispered. His mouth curved into a slow smile, one that made her knees weak. "This is a small place." He leaned closer, his breath warm against her ear. "I'll find you tomorrow. Promise." He winked, the gesture so casual it almost broke the tension, almost. He hesitated, his hand still cupping her face. "Tell me your name." "Daisy," she whispered. The name landed between them like a spark. Something flickered in his eyes, recognition, disbelief, but it vanished as quickly as it came. He stepped back, running a hand through his hair. "No way," he muttered under his breath, shaking his head with a faint smile. Kendrick's daughter. Same name. But she wasn't arriving until tomorrow. This was just coincidence. Just an American tourist named Daisy. "Pretty name," he said quietly. He caught her hand, pressing it briefly to his chest. "I'll find you tomorrow. I promise." Then he turned toward the door. And just like that, he was gone, leaving her breathless, the taste of salt and champagne still on her lips, the sound of the sea crashing somewhere beyond the walls. Next morning, The sun painted Amalfi in gold and white. Daisy stood before the mirror, twisting her hair into a low knot. Her hands weren't quite steady. Behind her, Steph's sleepy voice broke the quiet. "I still can't believe you're working while we're here." "Only mornings," Daisy said, slipping into a pale dress. "You guys leave in a week. I'm staying 2 months. Might as well start now." Lucy mumbled from under the sheets. 2 months in paradise working for your dad's business partner. Lucky you, if only they knew. Daisy's reflection stared back at her, cheeks still flushed from last night. "Will he find me?" Her chest tightened. "God, I fell for him in one night. One kiss. And I don't even know his name." She grabbed her bag. "Now," she murmured to herself. "Time to meet the famous Dr. Antonio Brannigan. If he's as old-fashioned as my father, these 2 months are going to be hell." Brannigan Aesthetics stood like a palace of glass and white above the Tyrrhenian Sea. Daisy's heels clicked against the marble floor as she entered, pulse racing. This was it. Antonio Brannigan, the owner, the legend her father wouldn't shut up about. She stopped at the reception desk. "Hi, I'm Daisy Kendrick. I'm here for the media position. Mr. Brannigan is expecting me." "Miss Kendrick?" The voice came from behind her, deep, familiar, impossible. Her blood turned to ice, every muscle locking. She turned slowly, and the floor tilted beneath her feet. The man from the club stood 10 feet away. Blue eyes, tanned skin, white coat with Dr. Antonio Brannigan embroidered on the pocket. No, this can't be happening. Her heart almost misstepped. Their eyes met. Antonio went completely still, his hand frozen mid-reach. His jaw tightened, color draining from his face, then rushing back. His chest rose sharply, like he'd forgotten to breathe. Then he blinked, and the mask slid into place. "Welcome to Brannigan Aesthetics," he said, voice too controlled. Daisy couldn't think. Her hand lifted automatically when he extended his. The moment their fingers touched, heat shot through her, last night's electricity. His grip was firm, but his pulse hammered against her wrist. He dropped her hand like it burned. "My office." Now. He turned sharply, not waiting. Antonio's office was all glass and white leather overlooking the sea. He held the door open. She walked past, too close, and his body went rigid. The door clicked shut, and silence wrapped around them like a held breath. 5 seconds passed, then 10. Neither of them moved, neither spoke, just stared. He exhaled hard and dragged a hand through his hair. "Well," his voice came out rough, "this is quite the coincidence. Wouldn't you say, Daisy?" Her name on his lips made her shiver. She swallowed hard. "You weren't supposed to arrive until this morning," he said, tone sharpening. "Lucas told me you were flying in today." Her teeth caught her bottom lip. "I came yesterday morning." Something dark flickered across his face. He looked away, jaw clenching. When he looked back, a faint, bitter smile crossed his mouth before vanishing. "Right." He nodded slowly. "The last time I saw you, you were 8 years old." Daisy's breath caught. "I didn't think you'd be that old," she blurted. Heat flooded her cheeks. "I mean, you look younger." His brows shot up, genuine surprise crossing his face. Then something almost like amusement flickered before disappearing. "I'm clearly not in your age group, Daisy." He stepped closer, and the air shifted. "I'm 42 years old." Another step. "And as of this morning, I'm your boss. The person your father entrusted to keep an eye on you." Her stomach dropped. He gestured toward the window. "Your office is across from mine. Lucas said you're talented with social media. I'm looking forward to what you'll bring to the clinic." Professional, detached. Like last night never happened, but his hands still flexed at his sides. He stepped back, putting more distance between them. "You'll meet my assistant, Nicoletta, at noon. Clinic tour, brand overview, content calendar." His voice was all business now. "Send me your outline by end of day." He glanced at his watch. "I have a procedure in 10 minutes. He moved to the door. "Get settled. Tonight, I'll take you to dinner. We'll discuss the next 2 months." Daisy managed a nod. Antonio opened the door, holding it. She walked toward it on shaking legs. Just as she reached the threshold, his voice stopped her, low, rough. "And Daisy!" She turned, heart slamming. His jaw was tight, knuckles white on the doorframe. "About last night?" He paused, throat working. "I'm sorry." It was a misunderstanding. His eyes met hers, intense. "You're my friend's daughter, my investor's daughter. I promised your father I'd look after you here." His voice dropped lower, like, "You were my own." The words hit like a punch. He stepped back, squaring his shoulders. That's all it can be. He gestured for her to leave, face settling into professional calm. Daisy turned toward the door, her legs still shaking, when a woman swept into the office without knocking. Tall, striking, mid-30s, with dark hair that fell in perfect waves, and a dress that probably cost more than Daisy's entire wardrobe. Her perfume, something expensive and heavy, trailed behind her like a signature, filling the corridor. Daisy froze in the doorway. The woman's eyes locked on Antonio first, her smile warm and familiar. "Antonio, darling, I was nearby, thought I'd stop in to see you." Then her gaze slid to Daisy, slowly, deliberately, head to toe, like she was appraising a piece of furniture. Antonio stepped forward quickly, his jaw tight. "Valeria, this is Daisy Kendrick, Lucas Kendrick's daughter." His tone was clipped, professional. "Daisy, this is Valeria Rossini, one of our investors, and my ex-wife." Ex-wife! The words hit Daisy like cold water. Valeria's smile widened, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, honey, look how much you've grown." She tilted her head, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "So, you came to visit your Uncle Antonio, did you?" Daisy's teeth sank into the inside of her cheek, biting down hard to keep from snapping. Antonio cleared his throat, stepping between them slightly. "Daisy will be working here for the next 2 months, managing our social media campaigns." His eyes flicked to Daisy briefly, apologetic. "Your father knows Valeria well." Valeria extended her hand, that practiced smile still plastered on her face. Daisy took it, matching the false warmth with her own. "Oh, it's lovely to meet you, Aunt Valeria." Antonio's lips twitched. He bit down on his lower lip, hard, trying not to smile. Valeria's laugh was sharp, brittle. "Oh, Cara, I'm not quite old enough to be your aunt yet." Her eyes glittered dangerously. But how sweet. The air between them crackled. Then Valeria turned her attention back to Antonio, her body angling toward him, dismissing Daisy entirely. "I just wanted to remind you about tonight, amore." Her hand brushed his arm lightly, possessively. "You know we have plans." Antonio's gaze flicked to Daisy for half a second, something unreadable passing through his eyes, before he looked back at Valeria. "Of course. I haven't forgotten." His voice was measured, controlled. "I have a procedure in a few minutes. We'll talk later." Valeria smiled, satisfied, and turned to leave. She paused at the door, glancing back at Daisy with that same cold appraisal. "Welcome to Amalfi, Tesoro," she said sweetly. "I'm sure you'll have a wonderful time here." Then she was gone, perfume lingering in her wake. Daisy stood frozen, her nails digging into her palms. In the last 30 minutes, her entire world had imploded. The man she'd kissed last night was her father's business partner, her boss, 42 years old, and apparently still entangled somehow with his gorgeous, territorial ex-wife. She had no idea how she was going to survive 2 months of this. A few hours later, Daisy sat at her desk, staring at the half-finished content outline on her screen. Her vision blurred. She blinked hard, throat tight. Every time she tried to focus, she saw him, his jaw clenching, his eyes on her mouth, that tension before he'd locked it all away. This can't happen. A knock at the door made her look up. Antonio stood in the doorway, shoulder against the frame, backlit by afternoon sun. The light caught his face, turning his edges golden. Her chest ached. He smiled faintly. "About tonight. I'm sorry." She forced her voice steady. "It's fine." "There's a gala tomorrow night," he said, his gaze holding hers. "All the major contacts in Amalfi. I'd like you to come with me." Her heart kicked. He cleared his throat. Since you're handling social media and PR, it makes sense. You should meet the key players, professional words. But his eyes told a different story. Of course, Mr. Brennigan, she said quietly. His jaw flexed at the formality. Good. He pushed off the doorframe. Pick up my cell number from Nicoletta before you leave, and send me your hotel address. His voice dropped. If I'm responsible for you, I need to know where you are. The possessiveness beneath those words made her shiver. Sure, Mr. Brennigan. His teeth caught his lower lip briefly, eyes darkening. See you tomorrow, Daisy. Then he was gone. She leaned back in her chair, exhaling shakily. Why do his words say one thing, but his eyes say something completely different? Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Don't forget. Hotel address. Her fingers trembled as she typed the hotel name. His reply came immediately. Good. Get some rest. Tomorrow will be a long night. She stared at the screen, pulse racing. A long night. The words felt dangerous. She had no idea how she was going to survive tomorrow, or what it would feel like to walk into that gala on Antonio Brennigan's arm. Evening fell like velvet over Amalfi. From the hotel terrace, the coastline glittered. White villas, lemon groves, strings of light stitching the hillside to the water. Daisy pushed open the door to her room and kicked off her sandals with a groan. They hit the floor with satisfying thuds. Steph looked up from the bed, still sun-flushed from the beach. Lucy emerged from the bathroom, towel in hand. So, Lucy's eyes went wide. Is it true? That gorgeous man from the bar is actually your boss? Your dad's business partner? Daisy collapsed face first onto the bed. Unfortunately, yes. Steph sat up, grinning. Daisy, do you realize you're about to have the most intense 2 months of your life? Don't. Her voice came out muffled against the pillow. Lucy perched on the edge of the bed. Come on. He was all over you last night. And now you work with him? There's no tension, Daisy said, rolling onto her back. The second he realized who I was, he drew a line so fast I got whiplash. She stared at the ceiling. He basically wants me to call him Uncle Antonio. Steph snorted. Uncle Antonio. Right, because that's totally the vibe when he was kissing you. A knock at the door cut through the room. Lucy jumped up and opened it. A bellman stood there holding an elegant box the color of dark cherries, tied with a black ribbon. Delivery for Miss Kendrick. He set it on the table and left. Steph circled it immediately. Please tell me it's pasta or diamonds. Daisy's hands trembled as she untied the ribbon and lifted the lid. Inside lay a dress the exact shade of ripe fruit at dusk, cherry red, with modern lines and a neckline that walked the line between elegant and dangerous. The fabric felt cool and sleek against her fingers. A small card was tucked beneath the hem. She pulled it out, pulse hammering. A small welcome gift for my friend's daughter, Antonio. The words should have felt distant and professional, but this dress said something entirely different. Steph leaned over her shoulder. Friend's daughter? Daisy, that dress is not friend's daughter energy. Lucy whistled low. That dress says he wants everyone to know you're with him. Daisy stared at the red fabric, throat tight. What was Antonio doing? Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. She glanced at the screen and sighed. It's my dad, she answered, putting it on speaker. Hey, Dad. Sweetheart. Lucas's voice filled the room, warm and familiar. How's Amalfi? Settling in, okay? Daisy smoothed the red fabric against the bedspread, her fingers tracing the cool silk. It's beautiful. The clinic is immaculate. Antonio's been very professional. Good. There was satisfaction in his tone, the sound of a plan falling into place. Listen, he mentioned the pool house on his property. Guest suite, really. Separate entrance, private. If it makes you feel safer, take it. I'd feel better knowing you're under his roof. Her stomach dropped. Under his roof. The words sat heavier than they should. Dad, I don't think... It's just practical, honey. You'll be close to work and Antonio can keep an eye on you. He paused, then shifted gears in that gentle way he had when presenting ideas as suggestions. Oh, and I spoke with the Goldsteins. Their son Matthew is in Amalfi this week, meetings for their Dubai project. Bright young man, Stanford grad, very steady. You two might get along. Steph's eyes went wide across the room, mouthing, "Who's Matthew?" Daisy pressed the heel of her hand against her ribs, where something tight and uncomfortable had settled. "That's thoughtful." "No pressure," Lucas added, which in father language meant some pressure. "Just dinner, if it fits your schedule. It's good to meet people who share our world, Daisy." "Our world." The phrase scraped slightly as it left her throat. "Sure, Dad. Antonio will introduce you two at the gala tomorrow night. Perfect opportunity." His voice brightened. "The kind of young man you should be spending time with, you know? Good family, good values." Her jaw tightened. "I'm here to work." "I know, sweetheart, but it wouldn't hurt to make connections," he softened. "Just keep an open mind, okay?" They finished with travel logistics and promises. Watch the steps at night, get some rest, call if you need anything. When the line clicked off, the room felt too quiet, the dress on the bed too bright. Steph flopped onto the mattress beside her. "Matthew sounds like a setup? Tall, smart, family money? I can already hear the wedding bells." Daisy smiled because it was easier than explaining. She folded Antonio's card, placed it back in the box, and let her fingers rest on the silk for one slow, treacherous second. "He's everything my dad would approve of." "And not your type?" Steph asked, grinning. "I don't have a type," Daisy said, though that was only true in past tense. She turned to the mirror, holding the cherry-red dress against her body. The reflection showed a woman she didn't quite recognize, someone caught between what her father expected and what her heart was quietly, dangerously reaching for. "Do you think Matthew will be at the gala?" Steph asked. Probably. But the image that rose in her mind wasn't Matthew at all. It was a man in a white coat with eyes like the Tyrrhenian Sea, offering a suite below his house with a separate door and a pool, and a promise he didn't say out loud. Lucy whistled from the doorway. "That dress is not meet the nice Stanford boy energy, Daisy." Steph nodded. "That dress says someone else entirely." Daisy stared at the cherry-red fabric, her chest tight. Steph grinned wickedly. "Oh, this just gets better and better." Daisy picked up her phone, fingers hovering over the screen before she typed carefully, "Thank you for the gift." "Very kind of you. Also, my father mentioned the pool house offer. I don't want to impose. I'll look for an apartment tomorrow." She hit send before she could overthink it. 2 minutes later, her phone buzzed. "I can't allow you to stay anywhere else when there's a perfectly good pool house sitting empty. I'd prefer to have you where I can see you." The gift was simply a welcome gesture for a lovely young woman. "You're welcome." "Antonio." Daisy stared at the screen, her pulse quickening. She shook her head and moved to the window, looking out at the dark water dotted with lights. "Every word has another meaning, doesn't it? Antonio Brennigan?" She whispered to the glass. "What are you trying to do?" Her phone buzzed again. She glanced down, expecting another message from Antonio, but this one was from an unknown number. "Matthew Goldstein here. Your father said you're in town. If you're at the gala tomorrow, I'd be honored to say hello." Daisy read it twice, then collapsed backward onto the bed, phone still in her hand. The problem was, when it came to men, Daisy had always been the good girl, cautious, reserved, the kind who held hands and shared soft, tentative kisses but never let things go further. Safe, controlled, careful. But for the past 2 days, all she could think about was that kiss at the club, the heat of it, the way Antonio's hand had felt in her hair, the way her body had responded without permission, without hesitation. And it terrified her. Not Antonio. Not the age difference, or the fact that he was her boss or her father's friend. What terrified her was how much she wanted it to happen again, how much she wanted him. She pressed her palms against her face, trying to steady her breathing. 2 months. She had to survive 2 months of this, living in his pool house, working across the hall from him, pretending she didn't feel the pull every time he looked at her. And now, Matthew Goldstein, the safe choice, would be at the gala tomorrow night. The choice her father expected her to make. 2 messages, 2 very different men, Two completely opposite choices. Daisy took a slow breath, her heart hammering, murmured to herself, I know exactly what I'm going to do tomorrow. The next morning, Daisy walked into the clinic in a black dress with a deep V-neck, heeled sandals clicking against marble, her blonde hair falling in loose waves down her back. She dressed deliberately, boldly, and she knew it. From across the lobby, she caught Antonio's gaze. He'd been walking toward the reception desk but stopped mid-stride, his eyes tracking her movement. For 3 full seconds, he didn't look away. Then he turned sharply and disappeared down the corridor without a word. Daisy smiled to herself and headed to her office. At noon, a knock at her door pulled her attention from the screen. A young woman stepped inside, dark hair, warm brown eyes, curves that belonged on an Italian postcard. Her smile was bright and genuine. We didn't get to meet yesterday. I'm Nicoletta, Dr. Brannigan's assistant. Let me take you to lunch. They ended up at a cafe overlooking the water, espresso and fresh pasta between them. Nicoletta leaned forward, animated. The clinic has been one of Italy's top aesthetic centers for 10 years. Dr. Brannigan, Antonio, is a brilliant surgeon. She sighed, eyes distant. He's the kind of professional I want to become. Daisy rested her chin on her hands, studying her. You really admire him. Of course. Nicoletta's cheeks flushed slightly. I want to be like him, a surgeon of his caliber. Daisy smiled, but the thought circled in her mind. Another woman drawn to him. Does he pull everyone into his orbit? She cleared her throat. What about Valeria? Aunt Valeria, I mean? Nicoletta burst out laughing. Don't let Mrs. Rossini hear you call her that. She'll destroy you. She leaned in conspiratorially. They divorced 5 years ago. I'd just started here. And it was a scandal, Daisy. She cheated on him, with a younger man. Can you imagine? Cheating on Antonio. Daisy's brows lifted. They act friendly now, but only because Valeria owns 15% of the clinic. Otherwise, he wouldn't give her the time of day. Daisy sipped her water, filing that information away. I need to have lunch with you more often, Nicoletta. 1 more hour, and I'd know every scandal in Amalfi. Nicoletta grinned. Any time. After lunch, Daisy stopped by Antonio's office. She stood in the doorway, her posture professional, her voice cool. Mr. Brannigan, I reviewed your previous media campaigns and sent you my analysis. I'll have the new strategy finished by tomorrow. She paused. Also, if you could brief me on the key attendees for tonight's gala, I can make sure my participation is effective. Antonio looked up from his desk, his jaw tightening. He nodded slowly, but didn't speak. His eyes traveled over her, the dress, her hair, the way she stood with perfect composure, like he was trying to solve something he couldn't quite name. Daisy turned to leave, but Antonio's voice stopped her, low and firm. Daisy. She stopped, hand on the doorframe. When she finally looked back over her shoulder, his eyes were already on her, intense, unreadable. I'll pick you up at 7:30. From the hotel. She turned back, tossing her hair over one shoulder with a small smile. Oh, that's not necessary, Mr. Brannigan. Matthew Goldstein is picking me up, but thank you. Antonio's posture shifted. He leaned back in his chair, his expression darkening. We discussed going together. Matthew messaged me last night. We introduced ourselves. She kept her tone light, casual. He insisted on taking me, and I couldn't say no. She paused, letting the words settle. But don't worry, I'll be by your side at the gala. You're my boss, after all. I'm there for work. Antonio's jaw flexed. He shifted in his seat, clearly uncomfortable. Of course, Daisy. His voice was tight, betraying his irritation. She smiled sweetly. See you tonight, Mr. Brannigan. Then she turned and walked away, her heels echoing down the corridor. As soon as she was out of sight, she whispered to herself, a satisfied smile playing on her lips. That's how you set boundaries, Antonio Brannigan. Daisy descended the hotel steps in her cherry-red dress, hair swept up in a loose twist, diamond studs catching the light. Her heels clicked against stone as she approached the sleek Aston Martin waiting at the curb. Matthew stepped out, and his eyes widened. She extended her hand with a warm smile. Matthew, finally, we meet. He was tall, early 30s, with tousled brown hair and an athletic build. Handsome in a way that felt effortless, approachable. He took her hand, his grin widening. Daisy Kendrick, no one mentioned you were this beautiful. He opened the door for her, and as she slid into the passenger seat, she made a quiet promise to herself. These 2 months in Amalfi would be better than she'd expected. The 10-minute drive passed easily. Talk of schools, family connections, Boston winters and Amalfi summers. Matthew was easy to talk to, comfortable in a way she hadn't anticipated. She found herself genuinely enjoying his company. But every time her mind wandered, it landed on the same 5 seconds. Antonio's eyes after their kiss, the way she'd felt like she was melting into him, the heat that still hadn't faded. She pushed the thought away as they pulled up to the villa. The mansion shimmered like something carved from gold and marble. The night air smelled of jasmine and salt, thick with laughter and wealth. Strings of music swelled beneath the hum of conversation, and for a moment, everything felt too bright, too alive. Matthew extended his arm at the entrance. "Shall we?" Daisy slipped her hand through his elbow, and they stepped inside. The villa's grand ballroom opened before them, chandeliers dripping light, candles flickering on every surface, guests dressed in silk and tailored wool. As they descended the marble staircase, Daisy felt the shift in the room. Conversations paused, heads turned. Eyes followed the red dress as it moved, the fabric catching light with every step. Matthew leaned closer, his voice low and amused. "I think you just became the most talked-about person here." She smiled, but her skin prickled with awareness. Someone was watching her. Not politely, not casually. She scanned the room and found him. Antonio stood near the bar, one hand in his pocket, the other holding a glass he hadn't touched. He wore a dark suit that fit him like it had been made for his body alone, his jaw clean-shaven, his hair swept back. He looked composed, distant, almost cold, except for his eyes. They locked on her the moment she entered, and they hadn't looked away since. They followed her across the room, traced the red silk when it moved, lingered on the curve of her neck when she leaned toward Matthew to hear him over the music. Nicoletta appeared at his side, her hand brushing his arm. "You're distracted tonight," she teased, leaning closer than necessary. Antonio's voice was low, measured. "Just observing the guests." "Or one guest in particular?" Nicoletta's smile was knowing. He didn't answer. His gaze had already returned to Daisy. Matthew was telling her about Capri, about lemon groves and a festival in Positano. His voice was steady and warm, but Daisy barely heard him, because every time she turned her head, Antonio was there, in the corner of her vision, reflected in the mirror behind the bar, framed by candlelight like a secret she wasn't ready to name. Matthew touched her elbow gently. "You okay?" She blinked, pulling herself back. "Yes. Sorry, just taking it all in." "It's a lot," he agreed, smiling. "Come on, let me introduce you to some people." He guided her deeper into the crowd, his hand at the small of her back, polite and respectful. But Daisy felt another hand, phantom, possessive, burning where Matthew's rested. She glanced back over her shoulder. Antonio's jaw was tight, his knuckles white around the glass. His eyes hadn't left her. And for the first time tonight she saw it clearly, the control he was barely holding on to, the restraint fraying at the edges. She turned back to Matthew, her pulse racing. Good, she thought. Let him feel it. Let him know what it's like to watch and not be able to do anything about it. Matthew was mid-sentence, making her laugh with a story about a disastrous ski trip in Vermont when Nicoletta and Antonio appeared beside them. Antonio greeted Matthew first, his hand extended. "Goldstein, how are you? Give your father my regards. I heard you're here for both business and pleasure." Matthew shook his hand firmly. "The legendary Antonio Brennigan. Good to see you again." Antonio's gaze shifted to Daisy, his eyes traveling slowly from her face, down to the red dress and back up. "Daisy, beautiful dress." Matthew stepped closer to her, his smile widening. "Yes, she's the most beautiful woman here tonight, don't you think?" He glanced at Nicoletta. Though you're both stunning, of course. Daisy's taste in fashion is remarkably sophisticated." Daisy swallowed hard, her eyes finding Antonio's. Antonio bit down on his lower lip briefly, then nodded. "Absolutely." His voice was tight, controlled. He turned back to Matthew. "We should have dinner before you head back to the States. I assume you're not staying long." Matthew glanced at Daisy, something softening in his expression. "Actually, I'm considering extending my trip a few more days." Antonio's jaw clenched visibly. "I see." Around them, couples began moving toward the dance floor. Antonio's hand landed on Daisy's shoulder, warm and firm. "There are people I need to introduce Daisy to tonight. I'll need to borrow her for half an hour." Daisy looked at Matthew apologetically. "I am here for work, after all." Matthew nodded easily. "Of course. I'll be here." Antonio's hand moved to the small of her back, guiding her away from Matthew and toward the dance floor. "First, we dance." Daisy's breath caught, his palm pressed against the silk, the heat of his touch burning through the thin fabric like fire. They reached the center of the floor. He turned her toward him, one hand settling at her waist, the other capturing her fingers. The music swelled around them. She cleared her throat, her body betraying her nerves. "Mr. Brannigan, thank you again for the dress. I've never worn this color before." Antonio's eyes locked on hers, intense and unrelenting. "This color is yours. It brings out your skin, your eyes." Her breath stopped entirely. His hand tightened at her waist, pulling her imperceptibly closer, though his gaze shifted away. "You and Matthew seem to be getting along well." She forced a smile. "Yes, we have a lot in common, and we're around the same age." Her chest tightened the moment the words left her mouth. Why did I say that? Antonio's mouth curved into something almost mocking. He looked down at her, and those deep blue eyes, almost turquoise in the candlelight, held hers captive. She tried not to look, tried to focus anywhere else, because breathing was becoming harder with every second. "When are you moving into the pool house?" His voice was low, casual, but there was an edge beneath it. "The girls leave in 3 days, but I'm not sure it's a good idea." His grip on her waist tightened again, possessive. "Your father and I both think it's a good idea." She couldn't stop herself. "But my father doesn't know we kissed, Mr. Brannigan." Antonio's eyes widened slightly. His lips pressed together, fighting a smile. "That was an accident, Daisy." His voice dropped lower. "If it's bothering you that much, I'll explain the situation to your father. I thought we'd discussed this and moved past it." He paused, searching her face. "Is there something else you're worried about?" This time, Daisy answered with more confidence, or at least she tried to look confident. "I'm not worried about anything." "Are you, Mr. Brannigan? I just thought I might not be very comfortable with you watching over me all the time." Antonio's expression shifted, something dangerous flickering behind his eyes. "I see." His voice was quiet, measured. "And stop calling me Mr. Brannigan. Antonio is fine." Before she could respond, Matthew appeared at Antonio's shoulder. "Mind if I cut in? I'd like to claim my dance before someone else does." Antonio released her with practiced grace, stepping back smoothly. "Of course." But as Matthew's hands replaced his, Daisy watched Antonio walk away, watched him move toward a group of businessmen near the bar, position himself where he could still see her, and then watch. His gaze never left her. She swallowed hard, her pulse racing. "The waters are heating up, Daisy." She forced herself to smile at Matthew, to follow his lead in the dance. "This man is playing with your mind. Don't let him win." While Matthew was deep in conversation with a group of businessmen, Daisy slipped away toward the terrace. Antonio stood alone by the stone railing, seemingly watching the sea, but she knew better. Her pulse quickened as she approached. She forced herself to breathe evenly, to look composed. "Stay calm. Don't get flustered. Just talk business. That's all this is." She stopped beside him, keeping her voice professional. "Mr. Brannigan, I'm ready to meet the people you wanted to introduce me to." Antonio didn't look at her. His gaze remained fixed on the dark water below. "The important contacts left about 20 minutes ago, Miss Kendrick." His tone was cool, detached. You seemed rather absorbed in your dancing. I suppose you lost track of time." Heat flooded her cheeks. She straightened her spine. "I was only on the floor for 10 minutes. I'm not sure what you're implying." Antonio turned to face her then, and something in his eyes made her breath catch. They weren't angry exactly. They were darker, more complicated than that. "It doesn't matter." His voice was flat. "Consider tonight a welcome party. Your participation wasn't particularly useful from a business standpoint, but at least you enjoyed yourself." The words hit her like a slap. Her eyes stung, vision blurring. She took a step backward, but her heel caught on the uneven stone. She stumbled, arms flailing. Antonio's hand shot out, catching her around the waist before she could fall. Suddenly she was against him. Her palms pressed flat against his chest, their bodies flush. "Just like that first night. Just like the club. Are you okay?" His voice was rough, concerned. She pushed against his chest, trying to create distance, trying to hide the tear that had escaped down her cheek. But Antonio had already seen it. Even as she shoved at him, his hand remained at her waist, steadying her. His other hand lifted, fingers catching her chin gently, tilting her face up to meet his gaze. His thumb brushed across her cheek, wiping away the tear. "I'm sorry. That was too harsh." Daisy pulled herself free, stepping back sharply. Her voice came out low but steady, each word deliberate. "I may be young, but I'm not stupid. What you just did was unfair, and you did it because I came here with Matthew." Antonio shook his head, jaw tight. "No, Daisy. I was angry about something else. I shouldn't have taken it out on you like that. I'm sorry." He reached for her wrist, his fingers wrapping around it gently. She yanked her arm back, the movement sharp and final. "Maybe this was a mistake from the start, Mr. Brannigan." Her throat felt tight, but she kept her voice controlled. Maybe working at the clinic wasn't such a good idea after all. "I'm going to talk to my father. There are plenty of companies in Boston where I can do this work. I think this vacation just ended." She turned and walked away, her heels clicking rapidly against the stone terrace. Antonio stood frozen, watching her go. He dragged a hand through his hair, his jaw clenching. "Christ, what is this girl doing to me?" The morning after the gala, Daisy woke to white light and the sound of gulls crying over the harbor. She lay in bed longer than necessary, replaying the terrace confrontation, Antonio's hand at her waist, his thumb on her cheek, the tear he'd wiped away before she could hide it, the way she'd walked away from him and felt his eyes burning into her back. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. She picked it up. Matthew had written, "A few of us are taking a yacht out today. Come with us. Bring your friends." Before she could overthink it, Steph snatched the phone from her hand, grinning wickedly. "You're going. We're all going. I'm not letting you sit here obsessing about last night." Lucy held up her phone, showing a photo of a sleek white sloop. "Say yes, Daisy." She said yes. By late morning, they were stepping onto a bright deck that smelled of salt and lemon oil. The crew cast off lines, and the marina fell away behind them in a glitter of white masts. Daisy wore a white bikini under a loose linen shirt, her hair caught back with a silk scarf. Matthew handed her a bottle of cold water, his smile easy and warm. He gestured toward the open water ahead. "We'll hug the coast, stop at a few coves." "Best water you've ever seen." He wasn't lying. The sea changed color as they moved, deep ink shifting to sapphire, then to an impossible electric turquoise. Music drifted across the deck. Lucy perched at the bow, taking photos. Steph stretched out on a towel, face turned to the sun. Matthew steered with one hand, bare feet sure on the teak. They dropped anchor in a quiet cove where limestone cliffs rose pale and sheer. The water was glass, so clear Daisy could see fish shadows on the sand below. Matthew pulled his shirt over his head, tossing it onto a cushion. "Swim!" They dove in, all laughter and cold shock and sunlight. The water was perfect, cool against sun-warmed skin, salt stinging lips. Matthew swam ahead, turning back to grin at her over his shoulder. "Come on, there's something I want to show you." They kicked away from the sloop, the music fading behind them. Daisy followed his lead, her strokes easy and relaxed. In the distance, she noticed a motor yacht sliding into the cove, white, sleek, expensive. but she pushed the thought away. Matthew stopped swimming and treaded water, glancing back toward the cliff face. His eyes lit up. "Close your eyes." She laughed, treading beside him. "What?" "Trust me." His hands found her waist from behind, warm against her skin. "Close your eyes." She obeyed, letting him guide her forward through the water. Keep them closed. The water changed, cooler suddenly, the sun blocked. She heard the echo of small waves against stone. His voice came soft near her ear. "Okay, open them." She did, and her breath caught. They were floating at the entrance of a sea cave, the water inside glowing an impossible phosphorescent green. Light refracted off the walls, turning everything into liquid emerald. It was otherworldly, like something out of a dream. Her voice came out as a whisper. "Oh my God, this is incredible!" Matthew floated closer, his hand lifting to brush her cheek, tilting her face toward his. His voice dropped lower. "Romantic, right?" He leaned in. His hand slid along her jaw, tilting her face toward his. His eyes dropped to her mouth. He leaned in, closing the distance, his breath warm against her lips. But suddenly, pain exploded through her left calf like a vice clamping down on bone. She gasped, her body seizing. "Oh, God, my leg!" Matthew's arms came around her immediately, pulling her against his chest, keeping her head above water. "Cramp?" His voice was urgent but steady. "I've got you." "Breathe." She tried, but the muscle was locked tight, pain shooting up her thigh. Matthew shifted, getting his arms under her properly, cradling her in the water. "Just relax, Daisy." "I've got you." An engine sound cut through the cave's echo, low, purposeful, close. A dark Zodiac appeared at the cave entrance, spray kicking up as it slowed. The driver cut the engine and drifted toward them. Matthew's head whipped around, water streaming from his hair. Surprise crossed his face. "Antonio, what are you... Were you anchored nearby?" Antonio pulled off his sunglasses, his jaw tight as his eyes went straight to Daisy. "What happened?" Matthew adjusted his grip on her. "Cramp." "Left calf. I'm helping her." Antonio leaned forward, hands already reaching. "Daisy needs to get out of the water. Give her to me." Matthew hesitated for half a second, then helped guide her toward the Zodiac. Antonio's hands closed around her waist, firm and sure, and he hauled her up in one smooth motion. Water streamed off her as he laid her carefully on the floor of the boat, his hand cradling the back of her head. Matthew pulled himself up onto the pontoon, still breathing hard, water dripping from his shorts. "I can handle this." Antonio was already kneeling beside Daisy, his hands moving to her leg. His voice was calm, but left no room for argument. "Let me, Matthew." Daisy bit down on her lower lip, trying not to make a sound as pain radiated up her calf. Antonio lifted her leg onto his lap, cradling it with both hands. His fingers found the knot immediately, pressing deep into the muscle. His eyes met hers, intense and focused. "Where exactly?" She managed to get the words out through gritted teeth. "There, left side." His thumbs worked into the cramped tissue, firm and relentless. His other hand wrapped around her ankle, holding her leg steady against his thigh. She felt the heat of his palm against her wet skin, the controlled strength in his fingers as they kneaded and pressed with professional precision. His voice dropped lower, almost a murmur. "Your body's too tense, Daisy." His hands moved up her calf in slow, deliberate strokes. "Relax. Don't fight the cramp. Let your leg go soft." She tried, but her muscles were locked, her breath coming too fast. His palms spread wide across her calf, his touch shifting from clinical to something slower, more intentional. "Let me do the work. Trust me." His fingers traced the length of her shin, then back down to her ankle, then up again in hypnotic rhythm. The pressure was constant, his hands moving with absolute certainty. Her chest rose and fell faster than it should, her pulse hammering in her throat. She turned her head to the side, staring at the cave wall, anywhere but at him. "Let yourself go? Not a chance, Antonio. I'm not giving you that." His voice came quiet, almost gentle. "Daisy, I need you to breathe. In through your nose, out through your mouth." She exhaled shakily, then inhaled, trying to steady herself. His hands didn't stop, palms hot against her skin, fingers firm, working the muscle until it finally, grudgingly, began to release. He looked down at her, his thumbs still moving in slow circles. "Better?" She nodded, not trusting her voice. "Yes, that's enough. I'm fine." But his hands lingered a moment longer than necessary, his thumb tracing one last line up her calf before he finally pulled away. Matthew cleared his throat from where he sat on the pontoon. "Thanks, man. I appreciate it." Antonio stood wiping his hands on his shorts, his expression carefully neutral. "I'll take you both back to the sloop." He started the engine, the low rumble vibrating through the Zodiac, and guided them across the cove. The sloop came into view, Lucy and Steph waving from the deck. As they pulled alongside, Matthew reached down for Daisy's hand to help her climb up. Before she could take it, Antonio stepped forward and scooped her into his arms in one fluid motion. He lifted her, effortlessly, one arm under her knees, the other around her back, holding her against his chest. He stepped onto the sloop's swim platform and set her down gently on the deck, his hands steadying her waist until she found her balance. Matthew climbed up after them, his expression somewhere between grateful and uncertain. He clapped Antonio on the shoulder with forced casualness. "Thanks, Antonio. You're a great uncle to her." The word hung in the air like smoke. Antonio's eyes flicked to Daisy's for one brief, loaded second. Something dark passed through his gaze before he shuttered it. Then he stepped back onto the Zodiac, his movements deliberate and controlled. "Enjoy the rest of your day, kids." He started the engine and turned the boat toward the motor yacht without looking back. Daisy stood on the deck, legs shaking, watching him go. The distance between them felt like miles, and nothing at all. Late afternoon sun turned the water to molten gold. The boats drifted, music soft and lazy now. Matthew sat beside Daisy on the cushioned bench, 2 cold bottles of water between them. He leaned back, studying her profile. "So, are you heading back to Boston? Or staying?" She turned to look at him, surprised by the directness. "What do you mean?" He shrugged, his expression open and curious. "Last night at the gala, you mentioned you weren't sure about staying at the clinic. That you might talk to your dad about going home." Daisy exhaled slowly, her fingers tracing condensation on the water bottle. "I talked to him this morning." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "He told me the experience here is important, that they need me. So, looks like I'm here for 2 months. Matthew nodded, a small smile playing at his lips. "Good. I'm glad." He took a sip of water, then tilted his head. "So, when are you moving into Antonio's pool house?" Her stomach tightened at the question. "I don't know. Maybe tomorrow, maybe Tuesday." Matthew set his bottle down and turned to face her more fully. "Well, I'm flying back Wednesday." His voice was warm, genuine. "Let me help you move before I leave. We can pack up your stuff together, get you settled. You shouldn't spend your first night there alone." Something softened in her chest. She reached out and squeezed his hand. "You're really sweet, Matthew." He grinned. "I try." She smiled back, but her fingers tightened around the water bottle. "Get out of my head, Antonio. I need to focus on Matthew. He's here. He's real. He's uncomplicated." Matthew stood, stretching, and held out his hand. "Come on, let's watch the sunset from the bow." She took his hand and let him pull her up. A few minutes later, Daisy found herself at the rail, binoculars in her hands. She lifted them slowly, scanning across the cove until she found the motor yacht's bridge. Antonio stood there, binoculars raised, pointed directly at her. Her breath caught. She jerked the binoculars down, heart slamming against her ribs. Heat flooded her cheeks. She pressed her palms flat against the rail, trying to steady herself. He was watching me. He's been watching me the whole time. She stood frozen, pulse hammering in her throat, then slowly, so slowly, lifted the binoculars back to her eyes with shaking hands. He was still there, still looking. And now his mouth curved into something between a smile and surrender, like he'd caught her catching him, and found it amusing. She dropped the binoculars again, this time tossing them onto the cushioned bench like they'd burned her fingers. Matthew appeared at her side, his footsteps soft on the deck. Hey, sunset's going to be beautiful from here. She turned to face him, chest still rising and falling too fast. Jealousy and something sharper twisted in her stomach. Her voice came out breathless. "Kiss me, Matthew." Surprise flickered across his face, then something like resolve. He leaned in, his hand cupping her jaw, and his mouth met hers, warm, careful, exactly what a summer kiss should be. Across the water, Antonio lowered his binoculars slowly, his jaw setting hard. He turned his back to the cove and walked away. Monday morning, Daisy walked into the clinic in a new red linen dress, her confidence restored. She settled at her desk, determined to focus on work and nothing else. Just before noon, Nicoletta appeared in her doorway. "Daisy, Dr. Brannigan wants you in the investor meeting. You're representing your father's 30% stake." Daisy grabbed her iPad and presentation file. The conference room overlooked the sea. Antonio sat at the head of the table, 2 other doctors beside him. Valeria sat across, perfectly composed in a cream suit. Daisy knocked and entered. Antonio's eyes found her immediately. When he saw the red dress, his gaze lingered, and his mouth curved into something that looked like approval. Valeria's smile was sharp. Her eyes traveled slowly down Daisy's dress and back up. Antonio leaned back in his chair. "I'm a doctor. I focus on patient care and medical standards. But as majority shareholder, I want to hear real growth strategies." Valeria's voice was smooth. "I look at the numbers. ROI. Profit margins." Daisy couldn't help herself. "So, your contribution is attending meetings and collecting dividends?" The room went silent. Valeria's head turned slowly. "Little girl, watch what you say in a room full of adults." Daisy straightened in her chair. "I'm here representing a 30% stake in this company. That makes me an investor, not a little girl. And investors ask questions." Antonio's lips twitched. Daisy opened her iPad. "I have a proposal, the Amalfi Confidence Project." She swiped through slides. "We don't just sell procedures. We sell transformation and trust. People don't choose a clinic, they choose a story they want to be part of." She outlined 3 phases. Education content with Antonio as expert, real patient transformation stories, and destination branding, aesthetic tourism in Amalfi. 6 months, 200% social media growth, 25% revenue increase. One of the doctors nodded. "That's brilliant." Antonio leaned forward, his eyes locked on hers. Then slowly, he started clapping. His voice was low. "Beautiful and brilliant." After the meeting, Antonio appeared in her office doorway. "You were impressive in there, professional, like a real businesswoman." His voice softened. "I'm proud of you, Daisy." She stood, moving closer to him. Her pulse hammered. "I told you before, I'm not that little girl anymore." Antonio's jaw tightened. His eyes dropped to her mouth before he caught himself. He cleared his throat. "Tonight, let me help you move to the pool house." Daisy turned back to her desk, gathering papers without looking at him. "I can handle it myself. Matthew's coming over to help anyway." Silence cut through the room. Antonio stood frozen. His jaw clenched, hands curling into fists in his pockets. He bit down hard on his lower lip. Finally, he nodded stiffly. "Of course." He walked away without another word, shoulders rigid. Daisy stood alone, hands trembling as she clutched her iPad. She exhaled slowly. "Stay away from me, Antonio," she thought, her throat tight. "Once Matthew leaves, I'll need distance. I'll need to stay away from you." Evening light turned the villa's stone walls gold as Daisy and Matthew carried the last boxes inside. There wasn't much. Clothes, a few kitchen items, some things they'd picked up shopping that afternoon. Matthew set a box down and looked around, whistling low. "Beautiful place. Ocean view, private pool, and your personal bodyguard living upstairs." He grinned. "This is paradise, Daisy. I should come back in a few weeks. We could enjoy that pool together." She laughed, brushing hair from her face. "Maybe." He stepped closer, his hands lifting to cup her face. "Hey!" The door opened. Antonio stood in the doorway, his expression carefully neutral. "Everything settled? Need any help?" Daisy stepped back from Matthew quickly. "No, we're fine. We were actually just heading out to dinner." Matthew grabbed his keys. "I'll pull the car around." He slipped past Antonio and headed outside. The moment the door closed, Antonio's hand caught Daisy's wrist. Not hard, but firm enough to stop her from following. His voice was low, controlled. "Let me be very clear about something. You're here, on my property, under my watch." His jaw tightened. "I don't want you bringing men back here. That's not going to happen. Understood?" Daisy yanked her wrist free, her eyes flashing. "I can't believe you just said that to me." Her voice rose. "Are you trying to play my father? Or are you jealous?" She stepped closer, her chin lifting. "Because Antonio. Either way, it's completely inappropriate." She turned and walked quickly toward the door. Antonio stood frozen, his hands clenching into fists at his sides. He shook his head slowly. "What am I going to do with this girl?" The pizzeria was small and warm, string lights overhead, the smell of wood-fired dough filling the air. Matthew sat across from Daisy, pushing pasta around his plate. Finally, he set his fork down and reached for her hand. His thumb brushed her knuckles. "Daisy, you know I really like you, that I'm serious about this." He paused, watching her face. "But I can tell something's distracting you. You're not fully present when we're together." Her stomach dropped. His voice stayed quiet. "Does this have to do with Antonio?" "What?" The word came out too fast, too defensive. She pulled her hand back slightly. "Matt, no. Antonio and we can't be together. Look at his age. He's a player. He's completely wrong for me." She shook her head emphatically. "This has nothing to do with Antonio." But Matthew was looking at her with something sad in his eyes. "Daisy," he exhaled slowly. "I figured maybe you were uncomfortable around him because your dad put him in that protective role. That's what I thought this was." He paused. "I didn't realize it was something else." Her throat went dry. She'd just trapped herself with her own words. "Oh, right, of course." But her face betrayed everything. Matthew's laugh was bitter, but he didn't let go of her hand. "Okay, let's take this slow, Daisy. You figure out what you want." His voice softened. "I'll be here when you're ready." Tears stung her eyes. She nodded, not trusting her voice. Outside the pool house, Matthew walked her to the door. He leaned in and kissed her cheek softly. "Take care of yourself." She watched him drive away, then turned toward the main villa. A light was on in an upstairs window. Antonio stood there, silhouetted against the glow, looking down at her. Daisy wiped at her eyes quickly, straightening her shoulders. Then she turned and walked into the pool house, closing the door behind her. 2 months. This would be home. Daisy's first week at the pool house passed quietly. Antonio had left for Milan on business, and she threw herself into work. The campaign was gaining real traction, positive responses flooding social media, international clients booking appointments. She was proving herself. That evening, she walked back to find lights blazing in Antonio's villa. He was back, and he hadn't said a word. Then she heard it, a woman's laugh, bright and easy, drifting through an open window. Her chest tightened. She stood frozen on the path, staring at the lit windows. "None of your business. Just go inside." But her feet carried her toward the main house instead. She grabbed an empty coffee cup from her kitchen and headed up the stone steps in her tank top and shorts, heart pounding. Her hand hesitated before she knocked. The door swung open. A brunette stood there in a bikini with a sheer cover-up, wet hair falling in waves. Her smile was warm, curious. "Hi there. And who are you?" Daisy forced a smile, holding up the empty cup. "I was hoping to borrow some coffee from Uncle Antonio." "My espresso machine died." She laughed lightly. "Pathetic, I know. Can't sleep without it." The woman's eyes lit up. "Oh, you're the American girl." She grabbed Daisy's arm, pulling her inside. "Get in here. We've got amazing limoncello. Forget coffee. You have to try this." Daisy found herself in Antonio's living room. High ceilings, white walls, art she'd never seen before. Her eyes scanned the space, drinking in every detail she had no right to care about. Footsteps echoed down the hallway. Antonio appeared, fresh from the shower, hair damp, white shirt unbuttoned at the collar. He stopped when he saw her, surprise flickering across his face. Daisy looked away fast, her voice coming out too bright. I just needed coffee. My machine's broken, but she dragged me in." Antonio's mouth curved into a smile, his voice warm with amusement. "Monica's enthusiastic. Just be careful with that limoncello. It hits harder than you think." The woman, Monica, poured a generous glass and pressed it into Daisy's hand. Daisy took a sip, the liquid burning sweet down her throat. The room suddenly felt too small, too warm. Antonio, in his half-open shirt, this gorgeous woman in a bikini, the whole intimate scene pressing down on her. She set the glass down quickly, her smile tight. "Actually, I should get going. I'll grab coffee tomorrow." But Monica shoved the bottle into her hands instead. "Take it! Enjoy!" Daisy clutched the limoncello and walked out fast, face burning. Hours later, near midnight, Daisy sat on her couch staring at the empty bottle. The TV flickered unwatched. Her head spun, the room tilting. She pressed her palms against her temples, trying to stop the spiral. Antonio and his women, she thought to herself, beautiful women in bikinis just showing up out of nowhere. She laughed bitterly, the sound hollow. He's probably slept with half of Italy. And here you are, sitting alone, jealous like some pathetic teenager. She shook her head. "You're an idiot, Daisy Kendrick. You're living in paradise, and you're making yourself miserable." She needed air. She stumbled outside, the night cool against her flushed skin. She looked toward the pool, the blue lights glowing underwater. And that was the last thing she remembered. When she opened her eyes, Antonio was above her, water streaming from his hair, his hands pressing rhythmically against her chest. She coughed violently, water burning up her throat. Antonio's hands immediately cradled her face, his forehead dropping to her shoulder. "Jesus, Daisy," his voice shook. I told you to go easy on that limoncello. If I hadn't come down." Before she could respond, he scooped her into his arms and carried her up the stone steps. The villa was silent now. Monica was gone. He set her on his bed and disappeared, returning with a thick robe. His hands went to the hem of her soaked tank top. "Let's get these off." He pulled the shirt over her head in one smooth motion. Daisy gasped, arms crossing over her chest. "Hey, stop, I've got it." Antonio's lips twitched. "I'm a doctor, Daisy. Remember?" She glared up at him, shivering. "You're not my doctor." He held out the robe, his expression firm. "Put this on. I don't know how long you were under. I pulled you out unconscious. I need to keep an eye on you tonight." His voice dropped, dead serious now. "You're not leaving my sight. Clear?" She swallowed hard, taking the robe. "Keep an eye on me?" "Here?" His eyes held hers, steady and unyielding. "Yes, in my bed. Problem?" Her throat went dry. She shook her head slowly, her voice quieter than she meant it to be. "No problem." She pulled on the robe and climbed onto the huge bed, perching stiffly on one side. Antonio stretched out on the other, still fully dressed. The space between them felt impossible. Daisy stared at the ceiling, hyper-aware of every breath he took. She kept her voice casual. "So, your girlfriend left?" Antonio turned his head on the pillow, studying her profile. "Monica's not my girlfriend. She's my cousin, my dad's side. We flew back from Milan together, had a drink, she went home." Daisy's chest loosened slightly, but she didn't look at him. Antonio's voice came softer. "Stop staring at the ceiling and look at me." She didn't move. Antonio's voice held a hint of amusement. "Daisy." She kept her eyes fixed upward, jaw tight. "Don't look at me like that." Antonio shifted closer. "Like what?" Her voice came out strained. "Like that." Antonio shifted, propping himself on one elbow. "How am I supposed to watch you with my eyes closed?" Daisy sat up fast. "You know what? This is a bad idea. I should go back." She swung her legs off the bed. Antonio was up in a second, his hand catching her wrist. "Daisy, stop." She tried to pull free, her voice rising. "Let go. Don't touch me." He released her wrist immediately, but stepped in front of her, blocking her path. "You're not going anywhere. You're staying here where I can see you. Got it?" She stared at his chest, refusing to meet his eyes. His voice dropped lower, rougher. "Why won't you look at me?" Something inside her cracked. She looked up, met his eyes. her eyes blazing. "Because you're messing with my head, Antonio. Don't think I don't see it. I'm trying to keep my distance." Her voice wavered. "But you're everywhere. Why were you watching me through those binoculars? Why do you look at me like that every time we're in the same room?" She shook her head, breathing faster. "I'm trying to stay away. Don't you get that?" Antonio pulled her into his arms before she could back up. She fought against him, hands pushing at his chest. "Let me go." His arms tightened, holding her close. He whispered to her ear, "We can't keep running, can we?" Her resistance melted. She stopped pushing, her forehead dropping to his chest. She breathed in, cedar and salt and something darker. Her whole body was on fire. She whispered against his shirt, voice breaking, "I told you I should leave. I told my dad I couldn't stay here. But you told him you needed me here. You wouldn't let me go." Antonio's hand moved to her hair, stroking slowly. "I know, Daisy." His voice was rough, almost pained. "I'm selfish as hell. I wanted you here. I couldn't stand the thought of you leaving." She pulled back enough to look up at him, confusion and frustration all over her face. "You're the one who set the boundaries." He nodded slowly, his eyes dark and raw. "I know." She searched his face, trying to understand. "Then why won't you stay away?" His jaw flexed. "Because I can't stop thinking about you. Not for one goddamn second." The air between them sparked. Daisy's resolve shattered. She reached up, fingers grazing his jaw, and kissed him. Antonio froze for half a heartbeat, then kissed her back. Hard. His hand slid into her hair, tilting her head, deepening the kiss until neither of them could breathe. The robe slipped off one shoulder. His other hand found her waist, pulling her against him. Daisy gasped against his mouth as his lips moved to her neck, trailing heat down to her collarbone. Her head fell back, breath coming in short, desperate bursts. This was the moment she'd been imagining for weeks, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. Antonio lifted her effortlessly, pressing her against the wall. The robe fell away completely, pooling at their feet. His fingers traced the curve of her spine, slow and deliberate, learning every inch of skin he'd been forbidden to touch. Her breath hitched when his mouth found the hollow of her throat, his name escaping her lips like a prayer. Across the room, the mirror caught their reflection, her bare skin against his still-clothed body, the way she seemed to disappear into his arms, into him. She whispered against his ear, voice breaking, "I want to be yours." Antonio's control shattered. He carried her to the bed, laying her down on the silk sheets. His eyes searched hers, dark and hungry but hesitant. His weight pressed her into the mattress, solid and real, erasing every doubt that had kept them apart. "Are you sure about this?" His thumb traced her lower lip, his voice rough. "Once we do this, everything changes." Her eyes met his, vulnerable, trusting, completely undone. "I don't care anymore." Her fingers slid up his back, nails grazing skin through the thin fabric of his shirt. "I don't want to fight this anymore." Antonio's mouth found hers again. This was the moment everything changed. The moment they stopped pretending distance was possible. The scent of his skin, salt and cedar and something distinctly him, filled her lungs with every ragged breath. She felt the heat of his palm through the thin silk still between them, branding her skin, claiming territory that had always been his even when neither of them admitted it. Their movements found a rhythm older than words, urgent, then tender, desperate, then slow, like they had all the time in the world and none at all. Every touch was an answer to a question they'd been asking since that first night in the club. He pulled back just enough to look at her, his hand cradling her face. "Daisy." Her name on his lips was reverent, careful. His eyes held hers, searching for any hesitation, any doubt. "Look at me." He breathed to her lips. "I need you to see me when we do this." She nodded, unable to speak, her chest rising and falling rapidly. Then he stilled. Something in the way her body trembled, the way her breath caught, not just desire, but something more, vulnerable. His eyes found hers, asking a silent question he already knew the answer to. Daisy? Just her name. Gentle, understanding. She bit her lip, chest rising and falling rapidly, and shook her head. Just slightly, just enough. His expression softened completely, tenderness flooding his features. His hand cradled her face like she was something precious. His mouth found hers again, kissing her, slowly, deeply. Between kisses, his voice dropped to a whisper against her lips. Let me love you. Another kiss, tender and claiming. Let me make you mine. His thumb brushed her cheek as he kissed her again. I'll be gentle. His forehead pressed to hers, breath mingling with hers. I promise. Her body tensed for just a moment, anticipation, nerves, the enormity of what they were about to cross. She'd never done this before, never let anyone this close. But with Antonio, she wanted to, needed to. Then she melted beneath him as he kissed her again, slow and deep, guiding her through territory she'd never traveled before. She memorized the way his muscles tensed beneath her fingertips, the rough sound he made when she whispered his name. The night filled with soft gasps and whispered names, silk sheets tangling around them, two people finally giving in to what they'd been fighting all along. There was no going back now, only forward, tangled together in silk and heat and the wreckage of every boundary they'd ever set. The night burned, but morning would bring something neither of them expected. Sunlight spilled across the silk sheets, warm as a touch. Daisy woke to the slow rise and fall of Antonio's chest beneath her cheek, and, for one blissful, reckless moment, forgot there was a world beyond this room. His fingers drifted through her hair, lazy and reverent. When he felt her stir, he looked down at her, his voice rough with sleep. Morning, Bella. She tilted her face up to meet his eyes, a soft smile blooming. Morning. His hand stilled in her hair, his expression growing serious. Last night? He paused, choosing his words carefully. I was your first. She nodded, cheeks warming slightly. His thumb traced her jaw, his eyes searching hers. I hope I made it worth it. Her hand came up to cover his, pressing it against her face. Every second of it. Something shifted in his expression. Relief, tenderness, possessiveness all at once. He pulled her up to him and kissed her, slow and deep, the kind of kiss that tasted like promises neither of them was ready to name. When they broke apart, both breathing harder, Daisy whispered against his mouth, Why me? Antonio pulled back just enough to see her face, confusion flickering in his eyes. What do you mean? She sat up slightly, the sheet pooling at her waist. That night at the club, you looked at me. You noticed me. There were so many beautiful women there. You work with beautiful women every day. Her voice was quiet, vulnerable. Why me? Antonio sat up, his back against the headboard, and pulled her into his lap so she was facing him. His hands settled on her hips, his expression thoughtful. It's never just about beauty, Daisy. His voice was low, sincere. Yes, you're beautiful. Stunning, actually. But that's not why I couldn't look away. His hand moved to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear. It's the whole package. It's your energy, the way you light up a room without even trying, the way you smile when you think no one's watching, the way you get that little crease between your eyebrows when you're angry. His thumb brushed across that exact spot, and she felt her breath catch. It's the way you talk, confident but not arrogant, the way you walk, like you own the ground beneath your feet, but you're still curious about where it leads. He leaned closer, his voice dropping. It's even your flaws, the way you bite your lip when you're nervous, the way you can't hide what you're feeling even when you try. His forehead touched hers. The moment I saw you that night, you were the most captivating thing I'd ever seen. Not just beautiful, alive, real, impossible to ignore. Daisy's eyes stung. She kissed him hard, her hands sliding into his hair, and he responded immediately, pulling her closer, tighter, until there was no space left between them. The kiss deepened, turned urgent. His hands roamed her back, her waist, rediscovering territory he'd claimed just hours before. She gasped against his mouth as he shifted her beneath him, the sheets tangling around them again. But in that moment, a car door slammed in the driveway. They both froze. Another sound, footsteps on gravel, the creak of the front gate opening. Then a voice, loud and cheerful, echoing through the courtyard. Antonio! Antonio's entire body went rigid. His head snapped toward the window, eyes wide with panic. "No," he breathed. "It can't be." "Who is it?" Daisy whispered, her heart already racing. He looked at her, and she saw genuine fear in his eyes. "He sounds like Lucas." Her stomach dropped. Antonio was already scrambling out of bed, grabbing his clothes from the floor. "Stay here." "Don't come down. Lock the door." His hands shook as he pulled on his pants. "Antonio! Daisy!" He stopped, turned back to her, his expression desperate. "Please, just give me time to figure this out." He kissed her once, hard, fast, terrified, then disappeared through the door. Daisy sat frozen in the tangled sheets, heart pounding so loud she could hear it in her ears. Downstairs, Antonio hit the courtyard just as Lucas came through the gate, looking tanned and energized, a leather bag slung over his shoulder. Lucas's face broke into a wide grin. He dropped the bag and pulled Antonio into a bear hug, clapping him hard on the back. "Antonio! Damn, it's good to see you. 1 year since I've been here." Antonio forced himself to return the embrace, his mind racing. "Lucas, we weren't expecting you. Why didn't you give me a heads up? I would have picked you up from the airport." Lucas pulled back, still grinning. "Wanted to surprise my daughter. She told me last week she was thinking about heading back to Boston." His smile turned slightly concerned, one eyebrow raised. "You're not working her too hard, are you? Being too tough on her as a boss?" He gave Antonio a look that was half serious, half teasing. Antonio shook his head quickly. No. She's doing incredible work, really. I think she just missed home." Lucas studied him for a moment, then nodded, seeming satisfied. He stepped back and looked Antonio up and down, his grin returning wider. "So, what's really going on here? You got a special guest upstairs?" He clapped Antonio on the shoulder, his tone turning playful again. "Come on, I know you. Who is she this time?" Antonio's laugh came out forced, his hand rubbing the back of his neck. No. Just sleeping in. Long week." Lucas raised an eyebrow, smirking. "Right, a long week." He looked around the courtyard. "So, where's Daisy? Still asleep?" Before Antonio could answer, heels clicked on the stone path. "Well, this is a lovely surprise." Valeria swept into the courtyard in a white sundress, sunglasses perched on her head. She stopped when she saw Lucas, her expression shifting to warm recognition. "Lucas Kendrick." She walked over and kissed both his cheeks in the Italian style. "It's been what, 4 years?" Lucas returned the greeting, his smile easy. "At least. You look well, Valeria." She turned to Antonio, looping her arm through his with comfortable familiarity. "I was just coming to drag this workaholic to breakfast, but now that you're here, Lucas," she smiled, "we should all go. There's that place by the marina you love." The hotel restaurant overlooked the bay, floor-to-ceiling windows framing black water and distant lights. Daisy arrived first, her stomach in knots. Lucas was already seated, jacket off, tie loosened, his jaw set in that way that meant he'd been thinking too much. Antonio walked in exactly on time, shoulders squared, eyes steady. A server poured water and retreated quickly, sensing the tension. Lucas didn't waste time on pleasantries. He set his hands flat on the table, his voice low and controlled, which somehow made it worse. You two are going to tell me what I already know, and you're going to look me in the eye when you do it." Antonio met his gaze without flinching. "I should have called you before you got on that plane. I didn't want to explain this over the phone. I wanted to tell you face to face. Then tell me." Lucas's voice was steel. Antonio took a breath. "Daisy and we crossed a line last night." He glanced at Daisy, then back to Lucas. The feelings weren't new, but acting on them was. Daisy watched a muscle jump in her father's jaw. "Dad!" Lucas held up a hand, silencing her. His eyes stayed locked on Antonio. "You?" His voice cracked slightly, anger bleeding through. "I trusted you. With everything. My money, my business, my daughter." He leaned forward, his knuckles white against the table. "I handed you a lamb and walked away thinking she'd be safe with the wolf." Antonio's expression tightened, but he didn't interrupt. "That's on me," Lucas continued, his voice rising slightly. "That's my mistake. I thought—" He stopped, shaking his head. "You've always loved women, Antonio. That's never been a secret. Why the hell should I believe my daughter won't just be another one?" Antonio's jaw flexed. He leaned forward, his voice firm. "Because this is different, Lucas. Different." Lucas's laugh was bitter. "That's what every man says. I mean it." Antonio's voice cut through. "You're accusing me of being a playboy. You're wrong." He held Lucas's gaze, unflinching. "Since Valeria and I divorced, I haven't let anyone close. Not really. You think I've been sleeping my way through Italy?" He shook his head. "I've been working. Alone. I didn't want complications." He paused, his voice dropping. "Until Daisy. She's not a complication. She's not a season. He stopped, searching for words. "She's the first woman I've actually wanted to keep." Lucas stared at him, his expression unreadable. Then he turned to Daisy. "And you?" His voice softened slightly, but the anger was still there, simmering. "You're 23 years old. You don't know men yet. You don't know how they work." Daisy's hands clenched in her lap. "Dad!" "You think you love him," Lucas continued, his tone almost pleading now. "But maybe you just love the idea of him. The forbidden thing. The older, successful, unavailable man." He leaned back, his voice rough. "Don't confuse infatuation with love, sweetheart." Daisy's throat tightened, but she forced herself to speak steadily. "I know how I feel, and I know this is real." Lucas shook his head. "You came here to work, to build a career. Don't throw that away to become someone's trophy." He stopped himself, jaw clenching. Antonio's voice came out quiet, but firm. "Lucas, if you need someone to punish me." He kept his eyes on Lucas. "Pull your investment. I'll buy you out in 90 days. I'll carry that weight. But don't send her home like she did something wrong. She didn't lie to you. I did, by waiting." Daisy felt tears prick her eyes, but she blinked them back. "I'm not going back to Boston." Her voice was steady now, stronger. "I'm not a child you pack up when things get messy. I have work here. I have a life here. And I'm not running." Lucas looked between them, something raw and conflicted in his expression. His gaze settled on Antonio, and his voice went cold. "You're going to keep her safe? Because if you hurt her, if you break her heart, you don't get to be my friend anymore. You'll be the man who destroyed my daughter, and I won't forgive that." Antonio held his gaze. "I hear you, and I won't." The server appeared with plates. No one moved to eat. Lucas picked up his knife, set it down again, then pushed his chair back with a harsh scrape. "I need air." He stood, looking down at both of them. The fury was still there, but exhaustion had crept in around the edges. 2 days. I'm giving you 2 days to think about this. Both of you." His voice was firm. "If I wake up on day 3 and this still looks like the smartest decision you've ever made, I'll stop fighting it." He paused, his eyes on Daisy. "But I haven't accepted this yet. Don't mistake me needing time for approval." He tapped the table once with his fingertips, then walked toward the exit. The silence that followed felt heavy. Daisy stared at her untouched plate. Antonio sat very still, then slowly reached across the table, his hand open, palm up. I should have told him yesterday, he said quietly. I told myself I was protecting you from the shock. But really, I was protecting myself from seeing his face do exactly what it just did. She slid her fingers into his. He's scared. He'll come around. Antonio's thumb brushed across her knuckles. Maybe. Or maybe he won't. But I'm not hiding you, Daisy. Not anymore. She squeezed his hand. I know. They sat there for a moment longer, then stood and left through the side exit, avoiding the main lobby. Outside, the night air was cool, the sound of waves steady and calming. 2 days, Daisy said softly. Antonio pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her. 2 days, he echoed, and then we deal with whatever comes next. She nodded against his chest, breathing him in, salt and cedar and the faint scent of the sea. They'd face it together. Morning light flooded the hotel terrace, sharp and unforgiving. Lucas sat at a corner table, where he could see both the stairs and the entrance, his coffee cooling in front of him untouched. Valeria arrived like she owned the sunrise, cream silk dress clinging perfectly, oversized sunglasses hiding her eyes, heels clicking against stone. She pulled out the chair across from him without waiting for an invitation, and sat, crossing one leg over the other with practiced elegance. She smiled, warm and practiced. Lucas, I thought we should talk. He kept his eyes on the menu he wasn't reading, his voice flat. You want to say something about my daughter? Her smile sharpened at the edges. About Antonio, actually. She raised a hand, and a waiter appeared instantly. She ordered cappuccino and fruit, her tone light, then waited until they were alone again. She leaned forward slightly, dropping her voice. Men like him don't change, not really. Lucas set the menu down slowly, finally looking at her. You left him. Not the other way around. Her expression didn't falter. The story he told you. She let the words settle like cards on a table. I left a man who couldn't choose anyone but himself. And now he's choosing a girl who has no idea what she's getting into. Lucas's jaw tightened, the only sign he'd heard her. My daughter knows what things cost. Valeria's voice softened, taking on a concerned edge. She knows nothing about men like Antonio. He'll consume her and call it love. She tilted her head, studying him. She's so young. What does she really know about running a business? About holding power? Her pause was calculated. Does she even understand what that 30% means? Lucas picked up his coffee cup, taking a deliberately slow sip. She holds that stake because she earned it. Valeria's tone sharpened just enough to cut. Your 30%, given to her. She leaned back in her chair, her posture relaxed, but her eyes hard. She's playing dress-up in a world she doesn't belong to. Lucas set his cup down with a soft click. And you belong there? Her spine straightened, genuine anger flashing through. I helped build that clinic. His voice stayed calm, almost conversational. You helped spend the money. There's a difference between building something and decorating it. Valeria's fingers tightened around the edge of the table, knuckles going white for just a second before she forced herself to relax. She recovered quickly, shifting tactics. Think like a businessman, Lucas. The optics, investor's daughter sleeping with the owner. In a town this small? She gestured vaguely toward the bay. Gossip is currency here. He didn't blink. Then I'll pay it. With transparency, clean protocols. She laughed, light and dismissive. You sound like a press release. Lucas leaned back in his chair, studying her the way someone examines a balance sheet. If this was really about the clinic, you would have gone to your lawyer. You came to me because you wanted an ally. His voice dropped lower, quieter. I'm not for sale, Valeria. For the first time, something cracked in her carefully maintained composure. Her smile went brittle. Her voice hardened. He will tire of her. Just like he tired of me. Lucas leaned forward, elbows on the table, his gaze steady and unflinching. You tired of him first. That's why you filed for divorce. He paused, letting that land. Now, you're jealous of a 23-year-old because she has everything you walked away from. Color rose in Valeria's cheeks, despite her efforts to control it. Lucas's tone stayed conversational but brutal. She's young, beautiful, talented. She has Antonio's attention, real attention. She has a career she's building herself, and she has the second largest stake in a company you only accessed through marriage. He tilted his head slightly. That must be hard to watch. Valeria's hand clenched around her napkin, crumpling the linen. Lucas stood, pulling his wallet from his jacket and dropping bills on the table. You don't work. You live off dividends from a company you have no real power in. And now you're watching someone younger, smarter, more driven step into a space you thought belonged to you. He slid his chair back in with controlled precision. If Antonio fails her, he loses me. But if he doesn't? His smile was cold, final. You've already lost. Valeria's voice shook slightly. You're making a mistake. Lucas picked up his jacket, draping it over his arm. Maybe. But it's my daughter's choice. He glanced once toward the bay, then back at her. Enjoy your breakfast. He walked away without looking back. Valeria sat frozen for a moment, rage simmering beneath her composed exterior. Then she stood, gathering her purse and sunglasses with sharp, angry movements. She made it 3 steps before a voice stopped her. Valeria, she turned. Antonio stood in the archway, arms crossed, his expression cold and controlled. Her spine straightened instinctively. Antonio, I didn't realize you were here. He stepped closer, closing the distance between them. Lucas called me after your breakfast invitation. His voice was quiet, but steel ran underneath. Stay away from Daisy. She forced a smile, brittle at the edges. I'm protecting the clinic. That's all. He moved closer still, his presence filling the space. You're protecting your bank account. His eyes never left hers. Whatever you're planning, complaints, gossip, lawyers, stop. She lifted her chin, defiant. I have every right to raise concerns about conflicts of interest. Antonio's voice dropped lower, more dangerous. And I have every right to revisit your divorce settlement. That very generous settlement that keeps you comfortable. He let that hang between them. Push me, Valeria, and I'll push back harder. You know how much influence I have here. Don't test it. Genuine uncertainty flickered in her eyes for the first time. He stepped back, his posture relaxed, but his gaze still locked on hers. If you come after her, if you hurt her in any way, you'll regret it. His tone was final, absolute. Stay away from my family. Stay away from my business. And stay the hell away from Daisy. He turned and walked away, leaving her standing alone, hands trembling with suppressed fury. Across the bay, Daisy stood on the clinic's terrace reviewing her content calendar. Antonio appeared with 2 espressos. Taste test. Left is bitter. Right is perfect. She took the right cup. Dad had breakfast with Valeria. Antonio went still, then nodded. How did it go? He didn't take her side. He told her, I get to make my own choices. Relief crossed his face, but then his expression turned serious. Then we keep it clean. You report to marketing, not me. Third-party reviews, no clinic dinners, and no hiding. She switched their cups, giving him the bitter one. Then we start honest. He laughed quietly, his hand moving toward hers, then stopping short. A camera clicked from the road below, then again. Daisy frowned. Tourists? Antonio followed her gaze, his jaw tightening when he recognized the photographer. Not magazine, paparazzi. His voice went flat. Someone hired him. Then, deliberately, he reached across the table and took her hand. She looked at him, surprised. Antonio, you said we'd keep distance. His thumb brushed her knuckles, his gaze intense. I said no hiding. Let them take their pictures. His hand tightened around hers. I'm not pretending you don't belong to me. Her breath caught. We agreed. We'll keep work professional, but I'm done acting like you're not mine. He held her gaze. Let them see exactly who you're with. Heat flooded her cheeks. You're taking a risk. You're worth it. His grip stayed firm, and I want everyone to know it. Another camera click. Antonio didn't let go. Valeria went straight to a law office, heels striking pavement sharply. She sat across from an attorney, removing her sunglasses. I want to file a conflict of interest complaint. Business owner, employee, investor's daughter. Names? She gave them without hesitation. Young, beautiful. And now she has Antonio. The image of Daisy holding 30% burned in her mind. I won't let her keep him. How quickly? Sign here. Filed today. She signed without reading. Across town, Daisy closed her laptop, hands still warm from Antonio's touch. Lucas moved his flight to stay 2 more days. She's stronger than I thought. Antonio looked at their joined hands. We do this right, together. And in the lawyer's office, a form slid into a folder, and something irreversible began. The official letter arrived on a Tuesday morning. Plain envelope, no ceremony. Antonio opened it in his office with Lucas standing beside him, and Daisy sitting across the desk, hands folded tight in her lap. He read it once, slowly, then looked up. His expression didn't change, but something in his shoulders dropped. Relief he'd been carrying for weeks, finally finding a place to land. Cleared. His voice was steady. No violations found. Case closed. Daisy exhaled, the sound shaky. Lucas reached over and squeezed her shoulder once, firm and grounding. Antonio set the letter down carefully, as if it might still bite. They reviewed everything. Protocols, timelines, reporting structure, third-party oversight. He looked at Daisy. They found nothing because there was nothing to find. She nodded, throat too tight for words. Lucas picked up the letter, scanned it himself, then set it back down with a satisfied grunt. Good. Now we deal with the other problem. The board meeting was scheduled for that afternoon. When Valeria walked in, she knew. Antonio could see it in the way her spine went too straight, the way her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. She took her seat, crossing her legs with practiced elegance. Gentlemen. Daisy. Her voice was light, but there was an edge underneath. Lucas didn't waste time. He slid a folder across the table. We're offering to buy out your remaining shares. Fair market value plus 10%. Valeria opened the folder slowly, her expression unreadable. She scanned the numbers, then looked up at Antonio. You want me out? Antonio met her gaze without flinching. I want clean lines. No more games. No more complaints filed in bad faith. His voice was calm, surgical. You take the buyout, or we let the board vote on removing you for cause. Your choice. Her jaw tightened. Cause, Lucas leaned forward slightly. Hiring paparazzi to harass employees, filing false ethics complaints, creating a hostile work environment. He ticked them off like items on a grocery list. We have documentation. Witnesses. Photos of you handing envelopes to photographers. Valeria's fingers curled around the edge of the folder. For a moment, she looked like she might argue. Then something in her expression shifted, resignation mixed with bitter acceptance. She closed the folder with a soft snap. When do you need an answer? Now, Antonio said. She looked at him for a long moment, searching his face for something she didn't find. Then she picked up the pen and signed, her signature sharp and decisive. She stood, smoothing her dress. I hope she's worth it, Antonio. He didn't hesitate. She his. Valeria's smile was thin, fragile. Then I suppose you win. She picked up her purse, her movements careful and controlled. Goodbye, Antonio. She walked out without looking back. That evening, Antonio stood on the villa's terrace watching the sun sink into the bay. The investigation letter sat on his desk inside, already filed away. Valeria's signed buyout agreement sat beside it. Daisy appeared beside him, sliding her hand into his. It's over. He turned to her, his expression finally truly relaxed. It's over. She leaned into him, her head resting against his shoulder. What happens now? Antonio pulled her closer, his arm wrapping around her waist. Now, he pressed a kiss to her temple. Now we get to just live. Below them, the town settled into evening, lights flickering on one by one, the sound of laughter drifting up from a restaurant, a boat cutting across the darkening water. For the first time in weeks, the air felt clear. The days after felt lighter. Antonio and Daisy fell into a rhythm. Morning espresso on the terrace where their knees almost touched. Lunch at the trattoria where Nonna pressed extra panna cotta into their hands. evening walks along the coastal path with fingers laced tight. One night at the villa garden, Antonio turned to her. The setting sun caught in his eyes as his thumb brushed along her jaw, his touch gentle but deliberate. His voice came steady, certain. "I love you." He paused, his hand still cradling her face. "Every moment with you is the right time to say it." Daisy's breath caught in her throat, her hand coming up to cover his. Her voice broke slightly when she spoke. "I love you too." She laughed through the tightness. "I've loved you since that first night." He pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her waist, his forehead dropping to rest against hers. She nodded against him, fingers curling into his shirt. No more half measures. He kissed her, slow, claiming, his hand sliding into her hair. Lucas had extended his stay, claiming quarterly projections. Daisy knew better. She found him on the hotel balcony one morning, coffee cradled in both hands, staring at the bay. She leaned against the railing beside him, her shoulder brushing his. Her voice was light, teasing. "You're staying to spy on me." He smiled without looking, his fingers tapping once against the ceramic. "I'm staying to make sure you're happy." She turned to face him fully, her hip against the rail. "I am." No hesitation colored her tone. "Happier than I've ever been." He set his coffee down slowly and turned to study her, his eyes searching her face. "He treats you well." Her expression softened, her voice dropping to something quiet and absolute. "He treats me like I'm everything." Something in his expression cracked, warmth flooding in. He exhaled slowly, his shoulders dropping as tension left him. "Then I can't ask for more." His hands came up to rest on her shoulders. "I gave him hell because I had to. You're my daughter." She covered one of his hands with hers, squeezing. "I know, Dad." His voice went rougher, emotion bleeding through. "But I see the way he looks at you. Like you're the answer to a question he didn't know he was asking." He reached up and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "That's the kind of man you keep." Tears pricked her eyes, her throat tightening. "I planned to." He pulled her into a hug, solid, grounding, his arms wrapping tight, his chin resting on her head. That evening, Lucas found Antonio in the study, bent over patient charts. He knocked once on the door frame. Antonio's head came up immediately and he set the papers aside, straightening in his chair. "Lucas!" Lucas gestured toward the empty chair across the desk. "Got a minute?" Antonio nodded, leaning back slightly as Lucas sat. Elbows came to rest on his knees, hands clasped loosely between them. Silence weighted the air, finally. Lucas leaned forward, his gaze direct and unflinching. "I'm heading back tomorrow." Antonio nodded once, his expression carefully neutral. "Daisy told me." Lucas's jaw worked for a moment before he continued. "You're a good man, Antonio. I've known that for years." He held Antonio's gaze. "But being good and being right for my daughter are different things." His voice stayed steady. "I've watched you. The way you protect her. The way you look at her." He paused, letting that settle. "That's what I needed to see." He stood slowly, extending his hand across the desk. Antonio rose immediately and took it, the handshake firm. Then Lucas pulled him forward into a brief, solid hug, clapping his back twice, hard. When they separated, Lucas's voice came out rough. "I'm trusting you with the most important thing in my life." His hand gripped Antonio's shoulder. "Don't make me regret it." Antonio's throat worked, his voice absolute when he answered. "I won't. I'll protect her with everything I have. I swear it." Lucas studied him one last time, then nodded slowly. "Good. Then you have my blessing." His voice softened. "Welcome to the family." 2 weeks after Lucas left, Antonio appeared at Daisy's door with a basket and blanket. He held out his hand without explanation. They walked to a hidden cove. He spread the blanket, poured wine, then set his glass down untouched. His hands shook slightly. He took her hand, thumb tracing her palm. "I'm half Italian, Daisy. Marriage means something to me." His voice was steady, despite the tremor in his fingers. "If I'm waking up next to you, If we're having a child someday, I'm putting a ring on your finger first." He pulled out a velvet box and opened it. Simple gold band. "Marry me. Be my wife." Tears filled her eyes, but she hesitated. "Isn't this fast?" He cupped her face, his gaze intense. "I'm Italian. If I'm sleeping beside you every night, if I'm living with you, if I want a baby with you," his thumb brushed her cheek, "then you wear my ring first. That's how I do this." Her breath caught. "Yes." He slid the ring on, then pulled her into his lap, face buried in her neck. His chest heaved once. "I love you," she framed his face. "I love you too." She kissed him as stars scattered above and waves whispered below. 4 months later, the church bells of Amalfi rang across the bay. The small cliffside chapel overflowed. Half the town, Antonio's entire Italian family, and a plane full of Americans led by Lucas in a perfectly tailored suit. Daisy stood at the back in simple satin, her hand tucked into her father's arm. Lucas squeezed once, his eyes bright. "Ready?" She nodded, breathless. The doors opened. Antonio stood at the altar in charcoal gray, his eyes locking on hers the moment she appeared. His chest rose and fell, emotion written plainly across his face. She walked toward him, and the rest disappeared. When she reached him, he took her hand, his thumb brushing across her knuckles. The priest spoke in Italian, then English. Antonio's vows came steady, his voice thick. "Ti amo, per sempre." She smiled through tears. "I love you, always." He kissed her before the priest finished, and the church erupted, laughter, applause, someone's nonna shouting blessings. Outside, long tables lined the beach under string lights. White sugared almonds wrapped in tulle sat at every place, 5 each, for health, wealth, happiness, fertility, and long life. Someone started the tarantella, and within minutes half the guests were dancing, shoes kicked off, skirts whirling. Antonio pulled Daisy close as the sun melted into the sea. Fireworks burst overhead, reflected twice, in the sky and in the water. He lifted her into his arms, carrying her down the stone steps toward the villa as rice and petals rained down. Cheers rose behind them. At the threshold he paused. She looped her arms around his neck. "Home," she whispered. "Always," he answered. They crossed together into the rest of their lives. From the moment their eyes met, the ending was already written, not in the stars, not in fate, but in the undeniable truth that some souls are meant to collide, no matter the years between them, the distance that separates them, or how desperately they try to stay apart. Some loves aren't supposed to happen, but the ones worth keeping are always the ones you fight for, even when the entire world says no. Dear viewers, thank you for staying with me until the very end. Now, let me ask you something from the heart. If you met someone who made you feel more alive than you've ever felt, but loving them meant risking everything, defying expectations and facing judgment, would you choose the fire, or would you choose the safety? And when you're old and looking back, which choice do you think you'd regret more? The risk you took, or the one you didn't? Tell me in the comments. I really want to know. And if this story touched your heart, made you feel something real, please hit that like button and subscribe. Your support means everything. Thank you for being here.